Hello, everybody. It's me, John Deltarune, and today I will be presenting Deltarune Puppetmaster Theory. This is all about the Strings of Fate, W.D. Gaster himself, and the Shadow Crystals. Before we get into it, very quickly before we get into it, don't leave yet, I would like to recommend that you view some of my other videos, because this is a very long video, or not long, but it is complex, and it assumes that you know a few things or have seen a few theories before, and I will mostly go over some of these points in my own video so that you don't have to watch them, but for more in-depth details on some of the key points that I will bring up, go watch my prophecy video here, nightmare theory here, and Molly Stars' device theory here. Because, of course, device theory is like 10 hours long, I will give a quick summary. Basically, it's like Gaster did not make Deltarune necessarily, but he made this device which connects us, the angel in the real world, to Deltarune in this lower world. It kind of assumes that Deltarune has layers where at the top is reality, heaven. There's like 0.5 is the device, and then under that is the light world and the dark world and whatever. That's basically the gist of it. I will get into anything more that is relevant to this theory when it comes up, but yeah, that should be it for the further ado, so let's get straight into it. First, what do I mean when I say the Strings of Fate? I believe Deltarune is obsessed with the idea of fate and destiny and prophecy, and especially trying to defy prophecy and fate. We see Rouse and Susie attempt to break the prophecy many times. We see Rouse say that he tried to be nice to everybody to try and get a different outcome, and we see that the final tragedy in the prophecy, we do not see what it is, but we know that it is very bad, and everybody, seemingly maybe except Chris, wants to defy it. But even Chris has that line where it's implied that they're trying to use the Shadow Crystals to, get a different ending to the prophecy, as they shake the Shadow Crystal in front of the prophecy, but no matter what they do, the text doesn't change. So it seems like Deltarune is very obsessed with the idea of fate, and the inability to defy fate. There's also spammed in with his silly strings, as you can see in this picture, where, he tries so hard to be free and be a big shot, but in the end, he cannot free himself from the strings of fate that bind him to his set path. There's that bee toy in the hospital with all the beads set marching grimly along their set path. Yada yada. I don't think I need to explain why the prophecy is a big thing to you, but this is what I mean by the Strings of Fate. So, what is the origin of the Strings of Fate? You would presume the prophecy. After all, I've equated them several times in the last 3 minutes alone, but I do not believe that the prophecy is the main originator of the Strings of Fate. Even though everybody wants to break the prophecy and break fate, there's this huge conflict. It seems like almost the biggest conflict in the game so far, even more than the conflict with the Night Gang, is the conflict to break the prophecy. So, why don't I think that the prophecy originates fate? Because it's the truth sung in glass. You have two types of organics that both say the truth sung in glass. The prophecy, of course, is equated to glass many times, right? Prophecy is holy glass. And the truth is sung in glass. And the truth, of course, is fate. But the prophecy only sings it. They did not write fate. The prophecy itself isn't some all-knowing, omnipotent entity that made fate. It's sung, it's retold. The prophecy, I believe, is simply a messenger of a higher truth that somebody made. Somebody wrote the music that is sung in this glass. Who that is, we don't know. Well, I do, but we'll get into that. We don't know now. Rousey says the prophecy was foretold by time and space to him. Caddy says it was sent by the angel in her little sermon where everybody's like really mad at her because she sucks at being a preacher. She says that they have this like super sick prophecy that was sent by the angel or something. She probably said it was like mega rad or something along those lines. Either way, we don't know if being sent by the angel literally means that the angel made the prophecy or that the angel just delivered the prophecy. But whoever decided the truth of the prophecy was the true maker of these strings of fate. So, who wrote its music? I believe the one that wrote its music, that binds all of Deltarune together to its set path, is of course Dr. W.D. Gaster. Now, I bring this up in my prophecy video many times, but TLDR, I'll give a bit more info on this later, but just for now, Gaster speaks in this all caps, very formal style, very precise and inconcise at the same time, just like how the prophecy talks. And he's this sort of weird higher power that seems to preside over the entire narrative. Especially in Undertale, when that one Gaster follower goes, it's rude to talk about somebody who's listening. You know, kind of like how. What other creatures would be always listening except a type of god? So maybe Gaster is this higher power type creature who did make the prophecy. And because they speak in a very similar syntax, I believe he did. So, what does Gaster want? Why make the prophecy? Well, Gaster very clearly wrote the prophecy. If you're not convinced, I have more points. But he also wants to break the prophecy. He takes no issue in the weird route or the normal path, and encourages the collection of shadow crystals to an extent. And all of these are behaviors that are seemingly connected with defying fate, or at least people who want to defy fate do them. So why would Gaster want to subvert his own prophecy? The only thing that we know Gaster thinks of as an issue is the Eggman. He has a gripe. If we get the eggs, he will say, "You have not completed the chapter without issue." I mean, he won't literally say that, but that's what he thinks. And the egg thing is weird too, because the check dialogue for the eggs is not too important, not too unimportant. Why would the only bad thing be not too important or unimportant? Doesn't make any sense. So, because we still have nothing on what Gaster wants, what doesn't Gaster want? I got into this, earlier, and by earlier I mean 2 seconds ago, but a nice tool to understand Gaster's motives are the PlayStation achievements, which you've probably heard about 100 times already, but allow me to remind you. One of these achievements, that is called Complete Chapter Without Issue. You will get this every time you complete a chapter, no matter what you do, unless you go to the egg room and collect the egg. Unless you say, well, there is a man here, or in chapter 3 and 4's case, do their whole weird mini game to get the egg. And this is his only issue so far. So, maybe if we understand what the Forgotten Man is, we can understand why Gaster doesn't want the Forgotten Man, and maybe that can tell us what Gaster does want. So, this is one of those things where it's getting back into my old theories, but this is going to be a hard sell for now, but basically, according to my Nightmare Theory video, the Forgotten Man is a sort of lost prototype goner that Gaster had made. And I won't even try to convince you on that here because I do not have the time, but I think something that is less controversial that we can still use to try and figure out what he is that he's trying to make Chris remember their past. He has been forgotten many times before, and he keeps bringing back old elements of their past that they have forgotten. Unfortunately, this brings us no closer to figuring out what he is or what Gaster doesn't want, so we're going to have to go a bit deeper than this. Before we move forward, I want to say I really want to hammer in that Gaster wrote the prophecy, because some of y'all are like, oh yeah, of course he wrote the prophecy, and some of y'all are like, huh? Which is fair. So, another overview. Blah blah blah, they all speak in all caps. Gaster speaks in, his very precise scientific wording. The prophecy does too. Big thing, though, is that Gaster he speaks to us in this area with this background called image_depths. And the prophecy, the little pattern in the background of it, is also image depths, just a bit more bright blue. So, that kind of ties Gaster and the prophecy, because they both seemingly come from the same place. And the prophecy is also said to have originated from time and space, right? Rousey says the prophecy foretold by time and space, and Gaster famously shattered across time and space. So, what's going on here? Does Gaster want his prophecy to come true? After all, why would Gaster write the prophecy and also wish it to be subverted? There's this thing like, why would you make a prophecy and then also be the one to forward breaking that prophecy? Why would you make fate if fate will impede you? Why make your biggest obstacle? I think I've hammered this in. Hammer of justice this in hard enough by now. So, Gaster certainly made the prophecy, and I can't really think of anything right now to indicate that Gaster would not want his prophecy, or why he would make his prophecy and not want it. So, it seems that Gaster really wants his prophecy to come true, right? Well, let's look at the other side of the coin for a second. Gaster has his complete chapter without issue achievement that we went over earlier. Curiously, the weird route and the secret bosses do not prevent obtaining this achievement. The weird route is stated by Rousey. Only in the weird route he says maybe there is a way to break the prophecy, but what if it's even worse? Why would Gaster, especially if the ending is going to be even worse than usual, why would Gaster not take issue with us breaking his fate, his prophecy, his Deltarune, to get something worse if he made Deltarune? Also, Gaster intervened in the night fight. He is the one that really motivates players to go forward and makes it far easier to reset so we can get the Shadow Crystals. In fact, he not only does this, but he literally says that we should not be able to beat the night, but we should be able to try anyway. That is some real freedom-coded speech right there, Gaster. What is up with you? So, I think we're going to have to go on our first, somewhat unrelated side tangent, so I can piece together all the lore to really come to my grand theory. But this will tie in pretty shortly. So, friend, of course, image friend, the tale of hell, whatever, the guy, John Deltarune, John, main antagonist of Deltarune himself, is always grinning, right? When we see him, he's always just this big Cheshire Cat smile, and of course his iconic pink and yellow eyes. His first appearance was just a smile. Most of his appearances are just a smile. His only real defining feature is his gigantic grin and pink and yellow eyes. He is the guy, he is the smiling friends. He is title card. But also, there's this creepy item in TV World in the vending machine right outside the S rank room, where you get the pink and yellow controllers given to you, named Smile, which is side tangent. It is said to be free, but it actually cost 1 point, presumably because Toby's like bad at coding. But regardless of Toby's skill or lack thereof when it comes to coding really niche things in this game, when you buy this item for free, it just says it smiled, and then you don't get anything. The only other info we have on this item is that before you buy it, it is described as always at your humble service. And there are also these unused strings in Undertale titled Demon Strings that say, Greetings, you have made yourself completely clear. I, your humble servant, will follow you to the utmost. Sound familiar? Friend, of course, being related to demons via being part of Gaster's device, and Gaster, of course, being the 666 guy. And he's also described, well, he's not directly correlated to the Tale of Hell, thanks Cammy, for, hating Friend Tale of Hell theory. But there is still very strong evidence that Friend is the Tale of Hell via his connections to cats and cat petters and whatever. And through this Tale of Hell, Friend is also related to demons. Friend, I believe, is this humble servant that talks right here, and so we actually do have lines of dialogue from Friend. He is Gaster's servant. If Gaster is the devil, then Friend is one of his demons. So, if Friend, belongs to Gaster, then maybe whatever Friend does can also tell us about what Gaster wants. So, if Friend really is Mike, like many people believe, and Mike drove the secret bosses insane, is it possible that it was Gaster's plan to give the shadow crystals to the secret bosses via Friend? And if that's true, maybe Gaster does want to break fate. Now, I do realize I kind of brushed over a lot here that would lead to some of these higher conclusions. I say, if like many people believe, that's a good piece of evidence. The actual evidence for this is that Friend shows up all over the Mike minigame. There's cats throughout the entire thing, even though there's only one Friend Mike segment. There's also Mike, or Friend, with his whole... He shows up in the Bat Hat minigame, he shows up in the little maze that we see in Noel's thing, and we know that, of course, the Mikes, their games are based on cat petters, so... TLDR, Friend has a lot of connections with Mike, and he's also connected to Spamton too, because we see him in the basement, and then Spamton's like, oh yeah, Mike. So maybe Friend is Mike. And I think just the sheer level of connections in the Mike minigame rooms and the Mike boss fight, that's what makes me believe Friend is Mike. Because there's one there's one Friend Inside Me Mike, but they have so many fewer attacks centered around them than Pluie Mike does. And of course, if Mike really is Friend, then it is possible that Mike was also the one who drove the secret bosses insane via his connections with phones and strings, so maybe he gave his secret shadow crystal to Spamton. I go over a lot more of this in my Nightmare Theory video. I have a whole section on Friend and what I believe Friend is, but this is the recap. So now that I'm out of the way of saying things that I really should have put on my slide, what does Gaster really want? Because we know Gaster both wrote the prophecy, but at the same time seemingly does want to break fate. Why would he make a prophecy, make fate, just to try and subvert it? The only way that would, of course, make any sense at all would be either if it's just some big giant experiment to try and see how to break fate, or if somehow Gaster accidentally made the prophecy. But how would he do that? So, because this is very inconclusive, we're gonna have to jump to Undertale Gaster to really get all the evidence we can so that I can show y'all my main theory. So, we know Gaster, of course, was shattered across time and space, and when he fell into his creation, which is described in entry 17 and seems to be a dark fountain, could he have not ended up in the depths that we see in Deltarune? Because, of course, entry 17, as I said just now, talks about darkness, darker yet darker, shadows cutting deeper. And it's, because of this, it's widely accepted that Gaster made a dark fountain in Undertale, and that's what's described in entry 17. And I'd be totally on board with that. So, is it not possible that he fell into the depths? That's a bit of a jump. So what would lead Gaster to do that? What did he really have to do in Undertale? Well, Gaster is also said to have made the core. That's one of the big things we know about them. That he made it, and that maybe that was the creation that he fell into. Maybe. We also know that he was the royal scientist before Dr. Alphys, and that's about it for Undertale Gaster. That's about all we know. If you ask MatPat, apparently he's also Sans and Papyrus at the same time, but you can't really prove anything more than just that. He also has characters called Goners, which are related to him. Well, you have the G followers, which might be the Gaster followers, or it might be Goner followers. And we also know that there is Goner Kid, who is in the same color format as the G followers. The whole copies are monochrome thing. And, funny thing, Goners is an anagram for Gerson, which is a really bad segue into Gerson. So Gerson and Gaster, I believe, are both parallels. Both of them being writers who have made a story, a narrative based off Deltarune. Gaster literally making the Deltarune prophecy, and Gerson making Lord of the Hammer, both of them being quote-unquote swallowed by their creation of some sort. Both of them, in different universes, were the brilliant mind who preceded Alphys, Gerson being the really good teacher in Deltarune, and Gaster, of course, being the amazing royal scientist that took years to replace in Undertale. Oh, ignore that. Gaster and Toby Fox. This is a bit of an addendum, but while Gerson and Gaster are parallels, Toby Fox and Gaster are parallels too, both being game developers, of course. But Gerson and Toby, importantly, are not parallels, because Gerson is not a game developer, he just writes stories. To extend, Gaster sometimes takes over Toby's Twitter account, or Blue Sky, or whatever it is now, I forget. Both are, of course, game developers, going off device theory, Gaster making the device that connects us to Deltarune, and I don't really have much to say on this. I threw in this slide and I was like, this doesn't really connect to anything, but still pretty interesting, might as well include it. Anyways, going back to the theory, W.D. Gaster has bits of his likeness that will seep into Undertale, besides the overt connections to him. Of course, there's Sans' iconic Gaster blasters, and about those, we have no clue why Gaster would have made them. But they do have a very particular shape. Of course, these are not canon Gaster blasters, but they are very similar to the ones that we see in-game from Last Breath, I want to say, whatever this image is from. But the shape of the Gaster blasters, and now I actually do have a cannon Gaster blaster, is very similar to a couple other things in Undertale, like this determination extractor and the Hyper Goner timeline destroyer that Azrael Dreamer has. I was rewatching some MatPat videos recently, and I realized after I had already made all my slides, Goner in Azrael's thing might be related to that. I'm not sure. Gaster was tasked by Asgore as the royal scientist to save monster kind from their underground prison. Knowing this, is it possible that Gaster experimented with determination? After all, it seems the only lead that they have to escape. If 7 human souls, which as we know are only separated from monster souls by determination, were able to make the barrier, then perhaps the determination would be the only logical lead to break it. And so, I believe Gaster started with his determination experiments. And also, one thing, Alphys also immediately started working on determination, so it doesn't seem like a far stretch at all. But anyways, I believe that it was Gaster who made the determination extractor. I don't believe that he was the one who built it, as it pretty explicitly says that Alphys built it, but I do believe that he designed it, and that is why it shares such an uncanny resemblance to his Gaster blasters. Alphys built it, of course, but in fact, she says, using the blueprints, I'm extracted it from the human souls. It, of course, being determination. So, she says using the blueprints. The. Not my blueprints. The blueprints. Like they were just lying around. Or maybe, just maybe, like Gaster made them. And there's also some very interesting blueprints in this game as well. Like the set of blueprints in Sans' lab with the broken machine next to it. In fact, this is a very Deltarune coded room after all. There's a drawer right next to these blueprints that has a photo of 3 people in it. 3 smiling people. And under it is the words written, "Don't forget." You know, the main theme of Deltarune. So this seems very foreshadowy for Deltarune. And there's also these blueprints right here that say, when you inspect them, you can't read the symbols they're written in. Or maybe it's just the handwriting. Wingdings, of course, are symbols, but they're also literal handwriting. You know, beware the man who speaks in hands. One last little side tangent before we get into literally everything. What about the nature of darkness? I believe that all dark worlds are formed with dark fountains. Actually, no, I don't believe that. That's just true. All dark worlds come from dark fountains. They coat the land in darkness and use determination to bring things to life. Unfortunately, that's about all Deltarune explicitly tells us directly about dark fountains, but we can glean other insight from things like the Titans, their spawn, and a bunch of other subtexts sprinkled throughout the game, but mainly sprinkled throughout Chapter 4. So, darkness is very often compared to water. They're dark fountains, they're geysers, as they're often called. They're also related to hell, via the fact that the light in Deltarune comes from heaven, so naturally the darkness would be hell, right? Then there's Jevil's line about hell's roar bubbling from the depths. Hell, roaring the depths, which, is what we call the place where the darkness comes from, presumably. This strengthens the idea that the darkness comes from somewhere, this ocean of shadow, this depths area, and that these depths are literally hell. And of course, fountains come from somewhere, they must, so that must be the depths. The darkness from the dark worlds flows out from hell, from depths, as Jevil calls it, and of course the depths is where Gaster talks to us, and the Gunner Maker. Darkness comes from hell, mixes with light to make the dark world, and above that dark world is the light world, and yet higher is heaven. There's the light, there's heaven, there's the dark, there's hell. See? Also, this really cool piece of art, that was not by me. That was by my friend. Yeah. Shout out to them, I suppose. Anyways, the darkness of this hell area is usually inert and unable to do anything. It is chaos incarnate. But when it seeps into the light world, when it mixes with something real, when it has a thought or thing imprinted on it from reality, the darkness makes that fantasy, makes that thought, makes that idea, makes that thing exaggerated. It makes the fantasy become real. Dark is the essence of creation. It's able to turn even thoughts real in the absence of objects. Like how in the dark sections of chapter 4, when you can't see anything at all, the Titan spawn manifest out of the darkness because your fear manifests out of the dark. It is the only thing the dark world can grapple onto, and so that is what it makes. The darkness, this depths, this hell place, is a metaphor for the very idea of fiction. Determination in Undertale is the power to change fate and create life. Whereas Undertale focuses on the former, Deltarune focuses more on the latter, or at least so it seems. Life given to objects via darkness and determination. Determination is the power that breaks the veil between the darkness below all things, and I do believe that it is below all things, and the light, the power to create fiction, to tap into this endless well of creativity and make, thrusting your pen to the page or your blade to the earth and making, drawing on that well of endless creation. The prophecy of Deltarune also seems to come from this depths area. It almost seems like the source code to Deltarune. It's always in the shadows. The full thing manifests out of an incomplete picture of it in the church. It always comes back, even if it's broken, and the panels have the same background as the depths. Like, the prophecy is almost hard-coded into the depths. But now, we can completely unrestricted get into Puppetmaster Theory. Finally. Sick. So, I feel like I've now laid out enough evidence where I can just say what I believe, and, I might have to here and there say because of this, or this, but, yeah, I'm just gonna, lay out the theory now. So, yeah, that was, what the past 30 minutes was building up to. So, anyways, Gaster, the one in Undertale, of course, was tasked by Asgore to free monster kind. More specifically, like Alfie says, Asgore tasked him to unleash the power of the soul. So, the man set to work, trying to figure out with his genius mind what made a human soul tick. And it likely took special effort, given he, had to build his lab from scratch and all that. But he did it. He isolated determination. the ability to change fate. It was now his. And so he devised a plan. He needed a device that would allow monsters to take this power from the humans and possess it themselves. If their kind was fated to be stuck underground, then he would use the power to change fate to break that fate. So, he got to work. Of course, during all this took a long, long time. Maybe years, maybe decades, maybe he was smart enough that he was able to do it in months. But in this time, he wasn't just a thing that did X, Y, and Z. He wasn't just a legacy. He was a person. He worked on his own hobbies, say, like story crafting. Like his parallel Gerson worked on story crafting. He also constructed the core around this time as well. Maybe he made the core because his experiments took so much power, or maybe he made it just because his people needed more power. But either way, he made the core and he made his own stories. Gaster, I believe, at this time wrote the prophecy, but I don't think it was his grand plan to make Deltarune. I believe it began as a humble story to work on in his free time. Like, maybe on Saturdays he made the prophecy. Maybe that's when he wrote it. Like how the church has service on Deltarune and Saturdays. Because wouldn't it make sense if they have this service the day that the prophecy was written? The day that Gaster would have had time off work? Gaster, then, experimenting with determination, undoubtedly found one of its uses. He learned of dark fountains. After all, he was experimenting with the way to break the veil. Of course he'd find the darkness. So, he might have even done this when he was finding how to make the determination extractor. The determination extractor, especially the injecting part, is very similar to how dark fountains are made, by channeling determination into one spot. Gaster would become fascinated by this phenomenon, finding them very, very interesting. And he would soon learn to understand everything he could about this phenomenon. Soon, he learned that determination was directly used to create dark fountains, that if you were simply determined enough, you could just course your will into your blade and make. And one day, Gaster made his fatal mistake. Maybe even on a Saturday, Gaster had perfected the determination extractor. To test his device, who would be a better test subject than himself? He would inject himself with determination. He would save the underground. He would break fate. But in doing so, he began to fly too close to the sun, and he would melt like an amalgamate. The royal scientist, though, was not ready to die, especially not with all the determination that was just injected into him. And so, he deigned to remove it the only way that he knew how to remove that determination, by taking a blade and stabbing the earth. But with so much determination in his stab, with so much willpower coursed into his blade, it was no ordinary fountain, but a ginormous gateway to the depths, so large that he inevitably fell inside it himself, barely alive, trapped in his void. Gaster fell deep, deep into the depths, the essence of creation. His story, the prophecy, fell in with him. Within this aether of creation, he was no longer bound to Undertale, but to all of his layer of existence, to all of the depths. See, from within Undertale's light world, he could not travel to Deltarune's light world, for example, he could not hop to this other timeline. But in the depths, there was no such boundary. There was no limits in the very essence of chaos. And now that Gaster was, for all intents and purposes, outside of time and space, he saw something happen that he had never meant to happen. The darkness he had fallen into reacted with the shards of the light that had fallen into it, like water in frying oil, burning up even due to the tiniest bit of it, burning his stories, his ideas, his hopes into something new, into his Deltarune. Darkness, of course, inherently has no form at all. It is potential. It only comes into an existence when there is something in a real, something true, that glances into it, that imparts truth onto it. Dark, being the basis of creation, being fiction, needs a writer to tap into that well to become a story. And Gaster, in this prophecy, with the perfect story and the perfect writer to be imparted into a whole new world. Sort of like a giant inverse dark fountain, where instead of the dark falling into the light and corrupting it, the light fell into the dark and corrupted it. Gaster's idea of the prophecy was now an immutable truth in this new realm. Perhaps Gaster was literally shattered across time and space, especially the time part. Maybe when he made Deltarune, because of his shattering across time, it really did have a history that went back thousands of years. Maybe that's just simply how the Dark Worlds work. Or maybe everything came into being simply just believing that it had a long, thought-out history. But either way, it likely didn't matter to the good doctor. To us, after all, we don't care that Deltarune literally began on a Thursday in their universe. Just 3 days ago. That's just where the prophecy begins, where it would make the most sense to start. Why should we care if the characters didn't actually exist before that? They say they do. So, I don't think Gaster really cared. But Gaster did not wish for his prophecy to become a real thing, destined to happen to all these characters and real people. He had written some horrible things in there that would have been great for a story, but to happen to real people, that couldn't just not slide. So, maybe out of genuine remorse, or maybe just morbid curiosity of what he could do from his new plane, Gaster concocted a plan to permanently change fate from the story he had accidentally made true. He both wrote the prophecy and wishes to break it. There was an object that Gaster thought had the power to break fate, when in the right hands, at least. The shadow crystals, essences of determination, the power to change fate. Right now, the crystals formed of his own tainted determination, the determination that made his story, his Deltarune, real. And so the shadow crystals would do nothing but continue to bring on his prophecy. But could he not make them change fate again? He could maybe, just maybe, have the determination purified into a force of change once more, to finally alter fate. But he wouldn't be able to, trapped from his position in the depths. He would need others, too, to have the hope and will and dreams left to purify the shadow into a force of change once again. So he began to position the crystals to be collected by the right person. Of course, Gaster could not put the crystals down himself. He was not in the right state to directly interfere. So he sent a friend of his, a tool maybe, a device, to help him. His tool, of course, going by many names: Friend, Mike, and just maybe the strange someone. The entity, confined to the deepest dark, was only able to seep into the dark world and gave only the most potent darkners shadow crystals, trying to convince them of the want for freedom from fate, to make them want to purify the crystal, to make them change fate. And this is why the tale of hell is the tale that must not be followed, because of course the tale, Tail, is trying to change the prophecy. But friend, this tale of hell, was unable to make the crystal holders actually do what Gaster and he had wanted. If they knew the truth, they went crazy. And some were purposefully ignorant, like Gerson. Still, maybe that was never the plan. Maybe the Darkners were never going to purify. Or maybe it was just Gaster's plan B. But there was one more power, one more idea he had to break fate, to give the prophesized heroes of his own legend the Shadow Crystals. Who could possibly be more powerful, and who more inclined to change the fate that would befall them? Well, there was one thing more powerful, that being the Angel. Gaster's final step, his Hail Mary, his silver bullet, to make sure there was no way that his prophecy would ever come true, was the Angel, a creature outside the world, a being who Gaster, from his position also outside the world, could now reach, a creature who would surely be able to change fate. The Angel, of course, as I had said, came from outside the world, and now Gaster could reach them from the in-between of realities, from the cracks and crevices he could reach up. And the angel wasn't bound by his prophecy, it didn't come from the same world, so if anything could break his fate, then it would be them, as the only choice, the only source of both meta-narrative freedom, being free from the code of the game, and narrative freedom, being free from the strings of fate. The angel, as Gaster would learn, was also morbidly curious, as he was, and maybe imbued with a proper vessel, the power of the Delta warriors, and the knowledge and opportunity to experiment, he believed they would nigh certainly change fate some way or somehow. And so, Gaster began working on yet another machine. Within the realm of fiction, he was able to construct it quite easily. Maybe he, like in that recent episode of the Digital Circus, conjured up a computer to interface with, or maybe he just literally made it out of thin air, but he was able to start coding his device. He only needed his idea and the right specifications, the right syntax, like coding a computer program. He made sure the Angel would have all the tools it needed, control of its own perfectly mindless vessel to be able to impart its will fully, and the secret bosses who would be able to deliver the crystals and give them the thought of freedom themselves, and even put the pure crystal in the menu early so they would see it and wonder. He gave them multiple save files to discover all possible routes. He gave them quick resets so they could beat even the toughest challenges that the secret bosses would surely provide. He nudged them forward in the hard parts like the fight against the Roaring Knight. This had to work. Yet another thing that Gaster also added just to make sure they knew what was going on here, was he made it so that in the file select, they would only get 3 gold stars if they had all the shadow crystals. And so, Gaster began to work on a vessel for his angel, the vessel that could give them the power of the Fun Gang, and a minor act of freedom on its own part to replace the prophesized cage, Chris, with his own artificial one, to really begin to jumpstart the freedom of the world. A vessel that the angel could fully utilize as their own. And the prophecy, as he knew, shouldn't prevent this from happening. It was still a cage with human soul and parts, so he should be able to do it, even from his realm of non-freedom, right? Unfortunately, Gaster himself, even from his realm of deepest dark, of ultimate fantasy, of his penumbra phantasm, couldn't break fate, even in a way that would just so technically not. Someone, maybe Carol, maybe Chris, maybe Undertale Genocide Route Gaster, or Kara coming back, blah blah blah, interrupted his creation sequence and put the soul, the human soul in parts, the angel, into the prophesized hero, Chris. This would certainly be a minor setback. But amongst all of Gaster's attempts to make them crave freedom, it worked, maybe a bit too well, as the angel would find this darker route, Snowgrave, as we would call it. It kills Birdly and many Darkners, and breaks Noel. It is certainly, and let me be clear, it is certainly not a good route. There has to be something really evil at the end of the prophecy for him to even consider wanting this. So, maybe Gaster had just planned it out as a last resort, just his final bullet against the prophecy. Or maybe it wasn't even part of the plan, and just the angel had found it. But either way, Gaster was at least complicit, if not overtly trying to make it possible. Why? Why would he do this? Why would he try to avert fate if the inverse of fate, like Rousey had said, is such a worse outcome? Well, we have 2 options. As I said earlier, maybe the final tragedy is so bad that even murder and manipulation and even more murder is acceptable. But what I believe is much more compelling of a story, and I know that this isn't like a good piece of evidence that it's more compelling, but just roll with me here. You're already like however long this recording is into this video, so just roll with me. Gaster maybe became so obsessed with freedom, so obsessed with the idea of breaking his own fate, much like the player on this route, that he lost sight of why he wanted to break fate in the first place. Gaster would come to realize the cost of freedom. Gaster, at least in a Weird Route file, is mad to break his strings, mad as we see Spamton Neo so obsessed with freedom that he lost his way. The world would get freedom, sure, but what world would be left? Like Spamton Neo, Gaster would then be the king of a short-lived, desolate world. Much like us, in a way, so desperate for freedom we forget why we want to be free from our set path. And, in the end, there would of course be no more miracles and no more magic left. The world would truly be covered by darkness. And yeah, there's just a lot of Spamton quotes here about how the weird route, as he says, is going to let us get freedom, but in the end, that will not be a good thing. On the weird route, we will end up making the Twisted Sword out of the pure crystal, which in of itself is made with all 5 shadow crystals. With fate changed, sure, but in the creation of the Twisted Sword, we make sure that fate is changed for the very worst, from our hollow freedom born out of utter hopelessness. And, in the end, hopelessness is the opposite of the game's themes of hope. So, of course, this will be a terrible, terrible ending. I believe that our will and Gaster's will clash at the end of the weird route, like how Spamton and Chris's do. And we will battle. Maybe we wish to destroy the world for some reason. Or maybe Gaster just won't let us reset now that we've gotten freedom. After all, we've already broken the prophecy. Why would we go back now that we have our goal? But we want to. We want to see a different ending. We want to see a good ending. And so we and Gaster will clash. And finally, the battle between devil and angel will occur. But, of course, there is not all just doom and gloom from the pure crystal. There's also hope still. Hope that is the main theme of the game. With all the 5 shadow crystals obtained, we will be able to purify the determination and let ourselves be truly free, to pick up that white pen of hope and make our own story with the power of the pure crystal forged into the sky mantle. And that is how we will attain true, good freedom. And so, there will be 3 endings. The normal route would locks us onto fate, where we fail to defy the prophecy. The weird route, where we defy fate, but destroy all that is sacred and all the reason to defy it in the first place. And the sky mantle route, where we defy the prophecy and make a new future, born out of hope. Alright, now that we've gotten to basically the end of the theory, I just want to do a summary, because this was quite long. I believe this is like an hour of footage or something like that. So, it all began when Undertale Gaster learned of determination in Dark Worlds, and in an attempt to free monster kind, injected himself with BT. Almost dying, he made a dark fountain to expel the determination tearing him up from inside, making a rift to the void where he was shattered, and the light of him and his story forged into Deltarune. In his world, his Deltarune, his story became the strings of fate that bound everything together. To save the world he had accidentally made from his horrible, horrible story being made real, made manifest, his servant, his friend, his device gave out the shadow crystals, each with the will and power to change fate if purified. Unfortunately, the recipient Darkners never followed the plan exactly through, so the Delta Warriors would have to be the ones to do it. And Gaster, in a last-ditch effort to make 100% sure that fate would be changed, he made the device for the angel to interface with the world. The angel, of course, had 3 choices. They could either do nothing and follow fate, or they could break it for the worse and fight Gaster in the evil, devilish weird route, or they could break it, really break it, for the better with hope. And I believe that this is all a big allegory for player desire for freedom and the ability to create fiction and obsession and getting lost in the need to be free, and the desperate and truly terrible things people will do out of hopelessness. That's it. That was Deltarune Puppetmaster Theory. Thanks a lot for watching. I've had to split this recording up into 3 parts. You get a cookie if you can tell where all the cuts are. But yeah, I believe that is all for today's video. If you would like to see more, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more hyperlink blocks. But no, seriously, blah blah blah, it helps the algorithm, and I must, like, evilly devour all of your engagement like a hydra. But it does help get my idea out to more people, and that's the main thing I care about, is it's really cool to be able to make things and then get the ideas out to people. So, I mean, all my other videos have gotten, like, I think in Nightmare Theory got like 6,000 views. That's insane. But if you're gonna keep up the momentum of this video, I'd appreciate it if you did, I don't know, some form of engagement. Comments are always nice. I really, really like reading the comments. Okay, some of the comments are bizarre. I'll grant them that. But it is still nice to see genuine opinions on my stuff, and even if they're not good. Oh, one more thing. A reason for you to subscribe, besides all the evil, like, engagement devil farming that I must do, is that I have, over the course of making and editing this video, figured out what my next theory is going to be. And it's about the night and the shadow crystals, and it kind of builds off of Puppetmaster Theory, and it is, I don't know if it's more crazy than this one, but it is definitely it is at least as stupid crazy as this one. So, yeah, if you'd like to see that, subscribe so you'll get notified. What other things the YouTubers usually say, whatever. I think that's it. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.